Left-wing philosophers working around the clock have developed a new school of thought called Critical Dishonesty Theory, or CDT, that perfectly explains why leftism is working just great. Now, of course, having been created by intellectuals and experts in association with expert intellectuals supported by intellectual experts, critical dishonesty theory is very complex and difficult for laypersons like ourselves to understand. But put in its simplest terms, CDT basically consists of describing things as they are not rather than as they are, and then silencing anyone who tries to say they are what they are instead of saying they are what they are not, which of course under critical dishonesty theory, they are because they're not. The dean of UC Berkeley's new critical dishonesty department, Snidely Sinister, says, quote, "Critical dishonesty theory is an entirely original postmodern critical theory that has never been utilized by any political movement before. And just look how easy it is to use. The genius of CDT is that it embraces every other form of critical theory under one umbrella of all-inclusive dishonesty. Gender, race, economics, and morality can now all be brought into line with leftist thinking by a subtle and intricate process known as lying, or as it's called under CDT, telling the truth." Unquote. CDT is largely derived from the brilliant work of Chinese theorist Ho Lee Clap, who scrawled it on the wall of the cell in his re-education camp where he'd been imprisoned for saying that socialism never works anywhere. Writing in the blood of dead cockroaches, Dr. Ho determined that he could win release from his cell simply by changing the meaning of words to reflect what leftists want to be true instead of what is true. For instance, if the word man can mean woman, and the word woman can mean nothing, then the word nothing can mean money, and the socialist economy is suddenly great. Dr. Ho was ultimately released by Chinese authorities and dropped off in San Francisco, where working with other homeless schizophrenics, he went on to prove that the words flaming, crime-ridden dung heap mean all of us here happy, ha-ha people, whereupon Dr. Ho was immediately hired to head the exploratory committee for Gavin Newsom's presidential campaign. President of the Teachers and Sexual Predators Union, Shirley Damned, says, quote, "Critical dishonesty theory is now being taught to children as young as 5, and anyone who says it is lying, according to critical dishonesty theory. We must root out dishonesty deniers who are spreading the truth, which is misinformation, as every child knows, because we're teaching them CDT, which we're not doing. Anti-CDT rhetoric is a form of white supremacy, especially when utilized by black people who then become white, which is very bad according to CDT because it's perfectly fine. If that's too complicated for you to understand, ask your 5-year-old to explain it to you because we're teaching him CDT, which we're not." Unquote. From its humble beginnings as the ravings of a lunatic smuggled into our country by Chinese dictators trying to destroy us, CDT has spread throughout the left-wing political and intellectual establishment as a tremendously powerful tool for explaining why everything leftists do works like a charm. CDT training is now being widely provided online so that a woman sobbing in her lonely room over the children she'll never get to have can find out why feminism is so great. A black man who's just been shot dead because he couldn't find a cop can hear all about how Black Lives Matter. A 13-year-old boy who's crawling around his hospital room desperately searching for his testicles can learn how happily he's been transitioned into the daughter his mentally ill mother always wanted. And an Uber driver who just paid his entire week's salary to gas up his car can discover how his poverty is really just the birth pang of a green and sustainable world in which he'll have a wonderful new job sitting on the curb and eating bugs. Leftists in mansions around the world are raving about CDT when they aren't just raving in general and calling critical dishonesty the unified field theory that will at last explain why all their failures are successes, all your poverty is wealth, and all your misery is joy. Namely because they're privileged lying bastards. If you desperately need more Klavan-y goodness, and you do, like and subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast.